ladies and gentlemen, we're going to convene the City Council Economic Development Committee meeting to order. Pleased to be joined by my colleagues, Councilwoman Lurie Martinez and Councilman Marquise Harris Dawson. We don't have any cards for general public comment, so we'll close general public comment. If there are no objections, members, we'll take 5 and 6 on consent. That will be the order, which takes us to the first item. Mr. Clerk.
Item number 1 is a CLA-CAO report relative to follow-up policy elements in connection with the citywide minimum wage ordinance and related matters.
All right, first of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I know it was a difficult decision some of you had to make, being here or being at the Dodger opener, but I think you made the right choice of being here with us today. Today we're going to send recommendations to the City Council in regards to a minimum wage amendments. It's critical that we move forward at this time because implementation is just around the corner, July 1, and we need to provide both clarity to businesses and to employees. It's also a timely discussion because of the recent action taken at the state level. 2 weeks ago, the state signed the new minimum wage law, building on our policy that gets workers to $15 an hour, and just yesterday signed a more generous family leave policy. As I have indicated over the course of the year as we've been discussing this issue, paid sick leave is a critical component. It doesn't do an employee any good to receive a higher wage only to risk being fired because they have to take time off to care for themselves or a loved one. It's a right that most of us enjoy and have come to take for granted. I believe that we can extend this right to workers in LA and that we can do it without significantly impacting their employers. With that said, I'd like to open up to my colleagues and then to the public for any comments that they may have. No?
Thank you.
Sir, Mr. Marquis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and all of you that have joined us today. This is a very, very important issue. I remember working with Councilmember Martinez and others on the school district on truancy. One of the startling facts about truancy in LAUSD, at least, is that 40% of truancies are of elementary age students. A big driver for that. So elementary age students, that means it's not like when you're in high school and you decide to go to the beach instead of go to school. Usually when an elementary school kid is absent, it's because their parent has another child who's sick, and they ask their older child to stay home and take care of them because so many people are working without any sick and paid time off. And so I think this goes a long way to improve the quality of life, not only of working people, but families throughout Los Angeles on the whole. And I think we have a better city because of it, better neighborhoods, and better families. So I thank you for bringing this forward for our consideration today.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. So we've been joined by our colleague, Mr. Paul Krikorian. And Paul, I don't know if you want to. That's okay. Your presence is timely. We've got some public comment on this item. Not surprisingly, I'm going to ask you all to hold your comments to 1 minute so that we can hear everyone and move forward with our business. So if you can prepare to come forward, Adina Tesler, Sarah Walsh, Ruth Dawson, and Melissa Akoba.
Good afternoon, members of the Economic Development Committee. My name is Adina Tesler, and I'm here on behalf of the California Restaurant Association. I know I've spoken with many of you and your staff about the impact of the minimum wage ordinance on small business and restaurants in particular. The restaurant industry worked with the city in passing the minimum wage policy and tried to suggest mitigating solutions, and today we're dealing with implementing the state mandate of the paid time off, the 3 days. It's difficult for the restaurants. They work on 4 to 6 hour shifts. The 3 days actually amounts to 6 days in a restaurant. In addition, restaurants already have systems set up so that employees can easily switch shifts for many reasons because they are a flexible work environment. So asking the restaurants to go above the 3 days is really more than they can absorb at this time. And we ask you to perhaps wait and look to the future to add any additional paid time off days and not to do it now.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead.
You may.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Walsh. I'm here today on behalf of the Motion Picture Association of America. Motion picture productions regularly film on location throughout the County of Los Angeles in multiple jurisdictions, sometimes on a daily basis. Additional sick time required by the City of Los Angeles would mean that our productions would have to maintain 2 separate accrual records, one for time spent working in the city and one for time spent working outside the city under the state sick leave policy. Moreover, employees regularly work for multiple employers within a single year, making the tracking of accrued leave time challenging for employers and our industry payroll companies. Our industry collective bargaining agreements provide for generous vacation pay, an additional 4% of straight-time earnings added to every paycheck. For example, an employee who works 40 weeks a year, this equals 8 days paid time off. Industry employees also receive holiday pay and accrue the 3 days of sick leave provided by state law. We believe this compensation model is in keeping with the spirit of what the Council is considering, and we urge you to consider this today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council members. My name is Ruth Dawson. I'm with the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California, and I'm here to say that the ACLU strongly supports the Council accepting a paid sick days policy for LA workers now. We believe this is both an economic justice issue and a reproductive justice issue for those in our city. And specifically, I'm going to speak about the definition of what family should be in this ordinance. We urge the committee to adopt a law that not only allows workers to use their sick time to care for family members, which is currently provided under state law, but one that also adopts a broader and more appropriate definition of family member as any individual who is related to the worker by blood or affinity. And this is the definition, as you've heard, that the federal government has adopted in its recent executive order for its federal contractors. And I say this because the diversity of Los Angeles families requires this broader definition so that paid sick days work for all workers. And really now is the time to pass paid sick days. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Melissa Acoba, and I'm representing Clinica Oscar Romero. We have 2 clinics, one in Boyle Heights and one in the Pico Union area. And I'm speaking here on behalf of the employees that they're talking about, many of whom are our patients. Many of our patients suffer from chronic illnesses, and they have higher rates of susceptibility to late-stage cancer diagnosis. And one of the most significant reasons that our patients cancel these preventative appointments is because they cannot afford to take paid time off, because they don't have paid time off protections. So Clinica strongly stands behind strong legislation that will increase paid sick days and protection for our patients so that we can mitigate their chronic illnesses and take care of them in a more timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Marcos Chania, Gabriela Verial, Isela Castro, Vicky Vaughn.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Marcos Chinchilla.
Good morning, my name is Marcos Chinchilla.
Pertenezco a Clínica Romero, promotor de Clínica Romero.
I am a community health promoter of Clínica Monseñor Oscar Arnulfo Romero.
Y estamos aquí por apoyar a las personas, agentes que sean días pagados de enfermedades.
And I am here because I'm supporting the paid family sick leaves.
Porque el caso mío de mi papá tiene 78 años.
My father has 78 years old.
Él trabaja en una compañía y no hay días de enfermedades pagados, ni días feriados, nada.
And he works in the company and he doesn't receive a paid sick.
Allí uno entra a trabajar de 6 de la mañana a 6 de la tarde sin derecho a hacer días pagados los días que uno trabaja.
And he works from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. without the right to have a sick time.
Mi papá todavía trabaja allí.
He's still working there.
Go ahead, continue.
Él todavía trabaja en la compañía y por eso yo estoy ayudando a la gente que están sufriendo esos derechos.
For that reason, because my father is not getting sick time paid, I'm here to support.
Hace 20 años yo trabajé en la compañía por 5 años,
I used to work there about 20 years ago, 5 years.
pero me salí porque me tenían trabajando de 7 a 6 de la tarde.
And I'm not working anymore because I have to work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay, gracias, gracias.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Gabriela Villarreal. I'm with the California Immigrant Policy Center, and I'm here today to support the proposal for Los Angeles to adopt six paid sick days. More than 1 in 3 residents of Los Angeles were born outside of the country. And when you talk about California, more than 1/3 of the workforce is composed of immigrants. So when we talk about how important this is for immigrant communities, I would just like to share that this proposal before you today will go a long way to prevent immigrant workers from having to choose between their family's health and paying the bills. Committee members, I strongly urge you to pass this strong motion before you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, council members. My name is Vicki Vaughn, and I am a Green Dot United Parent Leader. I am very passionate about the work that we are doing in my community. I have fought for the minimum wage increase, and I now am here to fight for today for the paid sick and to fight for wage theft. I am a single mom, and I am a single mom of 2, and I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. I am very well aware of the struggles to pay bills and to worry about what you need to do to take care of your family. It is heartbreaking the fact that many are victims of wage theft and many are working without sick pay. I feel that families should not have to choose between helping their families and paying their bills. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Isela Castro, and I'm a United Parents Leader with Green Dot Public Schools. I'm here to speak in support of the proposal for the City of Los Angeles to adopt six paid sick days. Over the past 3 years as a parent leader, I've had numerous conversations with parents about their struggles with having to choose between going to work and paying their bills. At times, their medical being able to stay home to take care of medical needs. They live in fear of missing a day's wage and even losing their jobs. In my job as a social worker, I visit clients on a daily basis who also have to make that tough choice. Forcing workers to choose between their family's health and paying bills is not fair and is no way for anyone to live. We appreciate your work in raising the minimum wage, but it's not complete without passing a motion today for 6 paid sick days to protect family, workers, and the public's health. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, next up, Gar Worry, Evelyn Cruz, Virginia Cassidy, and Rosemary Jenkins. Please come forward. Mr. Worry? You may proceed.
Hello, my name is Gar Hoare. I'm a registered nurse in LA County, and I have been for 22 years. I'm a member of SEIU 721, but that's not who I represent today. I represent my patients. Many times over that time period, I have discharged patients early out of the hospital, leaving against medical advice because they had to get home so they could get back to work, not ready to go, not even having had their prophylactic antibiotics. This is a common occurrence. We're sending these people home early, and I know that many times when we've kept patients with just a hand injury, 3 or 4 days, that we sent them home unemployed because they didn't have a job to go back to. Another thing that we should consider from a public health standpoint is viruses adapt and become more virulent. We know that HIV now was probably something that was around in the 40s, but children and infants could even fight it off. But when was the last time you had the flu? It lasted 5 days. It lasted 8 days. And those patients that there are patients that are in the public that have temperatures that are above 100 and some degrees. We're sending them back out in the workforce, still infectious.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Evelyn Cruz. I am a former Walmart worker, and I'm also a mother of one who has many times had to work sick and receiving a phone call from school that a child is suffering from chest pains having to take them to the hospital and coming back to a manager who reprimands you and threatens to fire you for taking care of your child shouldn't have to happen. And this is why I'm here in support of paid sick days and enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jenya Cassidy, and I direct the California Work and Family Coalition. We're a statewide coalition, and we're also part of a national organization of other state coalitions working on paid sick days and paid leave as good policy, that paid family leave and paid sick days. And, this is a national movement. We really need to have this be a national policy, something that everybody has. LA, especially being our largest city in the state, we think it's very important to have a meaningful expansion on what the state has. People need more than 3 paid sick days. For people like Evelyn, trying to be a good mother and be there for your children when you need them, be there for yourself and care for your own health condition, are not having those strong policies in place doesn't allow us to do that. And we really need your support. We need to pass a strong policy in LA. It'll mean so much for the rest of the state and the rest of the country if we do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosemary Jenkins, activist and journalist. As a teacher by profession, I know that every year once school begins, I would always, by October, become ill because these children are being sent to school ill. And why is that? For the most part, because their parents are not in a position to take care of them at home. So we're really talking about a safety issue for not only the individual, but the community. If the parent has to go to work ill, him or herself, then there's also the issue that workers are spreading viruses and other health issues to coworkers and customers. Think particularly in the markets when food is handled. And the children that come to school ill are also spreading from one child to the other, let alone teachers and other staff. So I urge you to support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, next up, Christian Robinson, Liz Bin Shai, Maya Paley, John Howland.
Good afternoon. My name is Christian Robinson. I'm with the community group ACE, and I would like to speak on behalf of the people who actually go out there and do the work, because I actually am one of them people. I was working with waste management, and I know what it's like to have to choose between going home sick when you really needed it and having to choose between not coming back to work. You know, there shouldn't be ultimatum for that. We should be considered to be valuable workers because we're the ones doing the hard work and standing up on our feet. You know, I was sick many times, and, you know, I had to choose between staying there and keeping a job or going home, knowing that I have bills, knowing that there are other people who have children who have bills to get paid. You know, there needs to be, I support the bill that's being passed because it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Liz Benishai, and I'm a senior policy analyst at the Center for Law and Social Policy. As you noted, since last time the committee met, the state passed a bill that will increase the minimum wage to $15, and that legislation also expanded the state's sick days law to include home care workers who were previously excluded. However, it did not expand the law to provide more sick days to all Californians. The ballot initiative that has now been withdrawn would have expanded the law to include 6 days instead of just 3. So it's now more important than ever that the City of LA pass a stronger local sick days law. It's unlikely that the state will strengthen its law in the near future. Last week, a leaked poll of 1,000 C-level executives, the majority of whose businesses are members of state, local, or national chambers of commerce, revealed that 73% and 85% in the West support more paid sick time for workers. So while groups claiming to represent businesses may oppose paid sick days, their members may feel differently. Indeed, according to surveys in San Francisco, 2/3 of employers support the law. In Connecticut, 3/4 support the law. And in Seattle, 70% support the law. I urge you to move quickly to pass a strong sick days law in LA.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maya Paley, and I represent the 2,500 members and supporters of the National Council of Jewish Women, Los Angeles. I'm also on the steering committees of the LA Coalition for Reproductive Justice and the California Work and Family Coalition. I'm here to urge you all to support an earned sick days policy for the city of LA beyond what the state of California provides. NCJW LA has 8 thrift stores, so we know what it's like to run a business. We also know how hard it is, as our store revenue is our main source of support for all the direct services we provide to 12,000 LA community members. We provide each employee with 12 earned sick days a year, and we do that because it's the right thing to do. It's right for the employees, it's right for the customers, and it's right for their families and friends. We know from the studies that this kind of policy does not harm economies, reduces turnover, improves employee morale, and improves productivity. You've heard the arguments from everyone else in support of more paid sick days in LA for part and full-time workers, and a policy that includes the blood and affinity option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm John Howland with the Central City Association. Let me state first off that this sets a floor on the number of sick days and not a ceiling. Businesses will be able to give as many sick days as they want in addition to whatever this committee and council decide. But adding in a large number of sick days when combined with the minimum wage will exacerbate many of the negative effects on employment and on employees' benefits that we're starting to see from the increase in the minimum wage. And if this measure is to make sure that sick people don't come to work in service industries, as we've heard, where they will make customers and coworkers ill, then the sick time must not be allowed to accrue to unreasonable levels, and it should not be portable. Employees coming to work when ill so that they can bank paid sick time for a cash payout later is counter to the purported reasons for this program. Enact a reasonable number of days that do not penalize small business owners. Make those days available after a sufficient amount of employment, and please make it non-portable. Thank you.
Thank you. Zanita Torres, Tim James, Ruben Gonzalez, and Alex Davis. Torres.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Zenaida Torres y soy madre soltera de una niña de 14 años. Estoy aquí para pedirles el apoyo para el salario.
Un momento. Do we need a translator? Thank you, sir.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Zenaida Torres. Soy madre soltera de una niña de 14 años y estoy aquí para pedirles el apoyo para el salario de 6 días de enfermedad.
Good evening. Good afternoon. My name is Anara Torres, and I'm a single mother of a 14-year-old, and I'm here to support the paid sick days.
Nosotros nos piden días de reposo para cuando nos enfermamos, para recuperarnos. Entonces, si nosotros vamos a trabajar enfermos, contagiamos a los demás compañeros y aparte nosotros no nos podemos concentrar en nuestro trabajo.
Sometimes when we catch an infection, they ask us to rest at home. Some of us don't have that luxury. We have to go back, and we encounter our coworkers. We endanger them by infecting them, and we just cannot survive in 3 days.
Cuando nosotros faltamos a nuestro trabajo, nosotros no completamos para pagar nuestros biles como nuestra renta o cosas necesarias.
When we miss days at work, we cannot complete rent payments or bill payments. It's crucial for our budget.
Entonces sí pedimos el apoyo de ustedes para que nos ayuden a conseguir esos días.
So we need your support to increase these paid sick days because we need them.
Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you.
Committee members, Tim James, California Grocers Association, representing traditional grocery stores with 80% of our membership, independent grocery owners. At this time, we're asking the council to not move forward on a paid sick leave proposal. And part of that's because we're still catching up with a lot of the major mandates that we've not only seen from the city of Los Angeles, but also from the state legislature, mostly including the minimum wage ordinance, as well as the paid family leave, which we just saw recently signed. An additional challenge for us in the grocery industry is consistency, especially across jurisdictions, in that we have not only competition across jurisdictional lines, but also workers of ours that regularly cross between different stores and neighboring cities, and that creates some challenges as well to make sure that we can go and provide the best opportunity for our employees without creating undue mandates that will cost our stores additional cost and operational time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Alex Davis, Legislative Affairs Manager at VICA. Collectively, we represent over 400 Valley and Los Angeles businesses and nonprofits which have expressed concerns with the proposal before you today. VICA is concerned that these mandated requirements will raise the cost of doing business, that will ultimately raise costs for consumers and residents. Local employees currently receive paid sick leave, and now as the local businesses face increases with labor costs, we simply cannot risk another additional burden on local businesses. We remain concerned that a potential collective bargaining exemption would harm businesses even further. We urge you, as you have in the past, to oppose a potential collective bargaining exemption, and also urge this committee to follow the recommendation from the CAO to not adopt restrictions on service charges. As stated in the report, these restrictions would force a specific economic model that may not be viable for all businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ruben Gonzalez. I'm here on behalf of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to echo the statements and sentiments made by the various business associations and business voices here today, but I'd like to focus on a little bit of a broader issue related to this. We've passed a minimum wage in LA. There's likely to be some form of sick leave passed today and beyond. We have things like Quimby fees tripling and quadrupling. At the state level and federal level, we continue to have continuous regulations like these that are adding costs to the everyday business model in Los Angeles. These are not bad goals. Raising people's quality of life is not a bad idea. Having more parks is not a bad idea. But business cannot be the one and only funding source consistently for all of the good ideas. There simply isn't enough value or margin in these businesses, enough ability to raise price without the negative impacts of greater unemployment and hurting the very individuals that these goals want to help. So please keep that in mind as we move forward. Grow the pie. Don't just redistribute the wealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last three speakers on this item, Manuel Villanueva, Miguel Vasquez, and Sidney Risudu. Sidney Ross Risudu, or Rito.
Good afternoon. My name is Manuel Villanueva, and I'm an organizer with the Restaurant Opportunity Center of Los Angeles. I work in the industry for over 10 years. The importance of paid sick days is crucial because we interact with a lot of people, not only customers but our coworkers, but mainly your food. The food that you go and eat every day might have some viruses, some bacteria that you have because you didn't rest enough, because you didn't stay at home enough to get rid of this bacteria to heal. As a personal experience, I injured my shoulder and I had to go to a specialist in Arcadia, and my restaurant was in downtown Los Angeles. When I called sick because I was sedated, I was forced to take public transportation from Arcadia to downtown Los Angeles to show my doctor's note. I was in danger of being run over, and I don't even know how I got to my house because I didn't have any. I didn't own a car at the moment, and that is just a basic necessity to have paid sick days and not be threatened to lose your employment because of that.
All right, thank you.
Mi nombre es Miguel Vázquez. Estoy aquí para hablar sobre lo de los 5 días pagados de incapacidad.
My name is Miguel Vázquez, and I'm here to talk about the 5 paid sick days.
Porque es importante porque en las enfermedades te dejan fuera de una semana en veces de incapacidad, y yo quisiera que los patrones, así como te ponen cláusulas en contratos, pusieran una cláusula, te voy a pagar $5 o 5 más días de salario por tu enfermedad. Ellos discriminan a uno.
And I'm here to talk about the 5 paid sick days because there's illnesses that put you out of work for more than a week sometimes. And I would love you to enforce, or as bosses, they put the rules and regulations on you. I would love them to say, hey, I'm going to throw another $5 because you got sick.
Nos piden experiencia en inglés. Ellos generan más de $70,000 al año para su bolsa y a uno no nos dan nada.
They generate more than $70,000 a year for them, for their pocket. We barely make a minimum wage, and they cannot even give us that very right of paid sick time.
La muestra aquí está en esta mano de un accidente que hasta ahorita no me han pagado nada. La columna igual.
I have a proof here on my hand. I've injured my hand several years ago, and up to this day, they haven't paid me anything. And also, my column was injured. My back was injured.
Gracias y ojalá y hagan algo al respecto a esto.
Thank you, and I really hope I count with your support.
Thank you. Gracias.
Hello, my name is Sydney Ross Risden. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a registered nurse, and I'm a member of the Global Women's Strike Group in Los Angeles. And as a women's organization, we are here to support at least 6 paid sick days, and also a definition of family that includes affinity. Mothers are the primary caregivers, and our children and our elder relatives deserve our care when they are not well. For a mother to make her children go to school sick because she can't take a day off, she's afraid she'll be fired, or she can't afford to lose the pay, not only endangers the health of her own child, who may well get worse, but also the other 30 kids in the class, and that's not right. So from a public health standpoint, this is a useful thing for the city as well as for individual families. I also wanted to say quickly that for adults who work in healthcare or the food industry, it's also nuts to have people who are sick going to work.
All right, thank you. That concludes our public comment as we ask the CLA and CBA to come to the table. Let me just note that we've been really having a discussion for the past year. This issue has been something that we all have been certainly aware of. 2 weeks ago, we heard the report from the CLA, and over this past several weeks, we've had a chance to have further focus on it, and I think there's been a real effort to balance the interests of the business community with employees as we move this policy forward. So, Madam CLA, would you like to?
Good afternoon. Sharon So, CLA's office.
Okay.
And John Wickham with the CLA.
So the item before you is an update, follow-up report on the citywide minimum wage. Specifically, we focused on 3 report-back areas that you requested. The first item, which has been...
A little closer to the microphone, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
The first item is the topic that has had most discussion today that relates to a paid time off policy. And in our report, we did do some research looking at what other cities have done. There's a table in there that does a comparison. What we would recommend if there is a desire to improve the benefits for sick leave, that it mirror state policy and that you possibly could add more days. The other parts of the report address collective bargaining as well as service charges. And in both of those areas, we provide some information. We don't recommend any changes with regard to that. The one thing that I do want to mention on paid time off policy is that there is a particular industry, specifically the entertainment industry, that actually makes payments to individuals. They provide additional payment based on the hours worked. And if there is a desire to add days, that we would suggest that the council consider this additional compensation as being compliant with any additional paid time off policy that you would adopt.
In addition, we have one recommendation in the report concerning the collection of data so that we can analyze the minimum wage law in accordance with the ordinance. We ask that the council instruct city departments to cooperate with the CLA-CAO as we gather economic data and pull that together so that we can do the analysis that's required every 3 years.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned in the report that adding time to the state-paid sick leave law would have a lower, quote, lower implementation cost. Why is that? Could we also expect to have lower implementation costs in terms of enforcement?
Yes, our expectation is that the business rules are known by the businesses and by the employees, and it would be a minor modification for businesses in order to accommodate minor changes rather than adopting a whole new policy. All the different business rules would have to change to comply with the city in addition to having to comply with the state. So the recommendation is to try and maintain consistency so that you diminish those areas where there can be conflict, where there can be confusion, and that helps the employers in implementing, it helps the employees in understanding what their rights are, and it helps the city on the enforcement side when we have to then go out and check on any concerns that have been raised and brought to our attention.
So would you say a majority of cities that with paid sick leave policies follow this model of adding time to the state's
Most
provisions?
of the cities have done that, especially in Northern California, where they've added additional hours that they mostly mirror what the state has approved in terms of their paid time off policy. I think that a few cities did add one provision as it related to family member, and that being if an employee doesn't have a spouse or a registered domestic partner, that they allowed to be designate another individual for which to either care for them or provide assistance to them as part of the paid time off policy.
Okay. Members, any questions at this point? Mr. Correa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's a real logic to trying to comport with the state law, both for businesses' sake, for employees' sake, and for the city's sake, just to know that we're kind of working on the same set of rules, but extending it with additional time here in the city. I think there's a great logic to that. On the other hand, I don't know that there's any reason that the state law is the perfect law. And the definition of family member is a good example of where maybe the state law has not been drafted as well as it might have been. So this language that we've talked about with the blood or affinity addition, which is utilized in the federal employment context, there's precedent, there's probably ways that can be clearly identified based on case law and regulatory authority and so forth in the federal law. I feel comfortable with that. I'm trying to figure out the mechanics of how it would work. If, for example, if somebody's taking sick time relating to a member of the family that's defined under our law but is not included under state law, presumably that would trigger our 6 days, but it wouldn't trigger any of the entitlement under state law. So, because it wouldn't be an eligible absence under state law. So how would that work? How would the employee deal with that?
So as long as as somebody else said during public comment, the state law is the baseline. So if we were to provide any additional benefits, if we were to expand the definition, then yes, then your local regulation would trump the state law. We just can't do anything less than what state law provides.
I'm asking something different. I get that, but what we're adding on to the state law.
Right.
If the particular familiar relationship is not included within the state law, but it is included within our law, then that employee presumably could only take advantage of the city program and not the state program, because there wouldn't be an eligible familial relationship within the state law. So they would use the 6 days, and then would that be all that they would be able to utilize?
The Emeryville ordinance in particular states that all provisions of state law apply to the implementation of their ordinance except where modified within their ordinance. So my reading of that is that the state law, they're just pinging off of the state law, and so anything in state law is still going to qualify. They're just adding a little bit of extra into it. So I don't think they're two separate programs. I think it's one program that's increased.
I get it, but they would be two separate programs in the circumstance of a person, say, who wants to take some time off for a family member who's defined within the state law, but then other time off for a family member who's included in the definition within our policy, but not the state law. In that case, the programs do diverge, and I don't know if that's to the advantage or the disadvantage of the employee as I'm sitting here, or the business. Anyway, that's something to as the ordinance comes back, I guess that's something that we'll have to figure out a drafting solution to it.
We can talk to the city attorney about that question.
I would be very interested in making sure that the entertainment industry issue that you described is dealt with in this ordinance, and I would hope that our report will encompass that because of the unique circumstances where the industry, for the most part, pays a monetary equivalent to the sick pay, and just as other businesses may already provide sick pay beyond what our policy is, if I would suggest that if the employer pays a monetary equivalent in lieu of that, that would also be an adequate substitute because of that specific industry concern. And then the other question, I guess, is when other cities have added extra time onto the state law, is there any minimum amount of time that must be taken as a block? So in other words, could you take an hour a day every day for 3 weeks? Or must you take, say, a half a day or 3 hour minimum block or a full day or something? How have other ordinances dealt with that situation?
I seem to recall 2 hours being specified by state law. I don't think any other local ordinances were that specific.
So that's already dealt with in the state law, and we would just track whatever
I
the state law is.
believe so, but I can verify that. We can check on that. Mr. Krikorian, I did want to point out one thing, though, with regard to the new executive order that defines blood and affinity. It is a recent new executive order, and actually the Secretary of Labor is actually circulating for comment regulations on how to implement that. They even acknowledge that the Office of Personnel and Management at the federal level doesn't have a definition of it, so that regulation is actually being circulated now, and they're seeking comments. So, and this relates to only federal contractors. That's who it would apply to, so it's only on federal contractors.
So maybe it's not a well-defined body of law yet, but it's in the process of being defined. There's precedent for it. We're not just pulling it out of the air, so I'm comfortable with that. I just want to figure out how we deal with the discrepancy then with state law.
Fine-tune it. Any other questions, members? I want to thank the CLA for its attention to this issue, for your hard work, and also for the input from the council offices as these discussions have gone on. I'm going to propose, members, that we approve the CLA report recommendations and request the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance to create a paid sick leave policy in the city of Los Angeles that is modeled after the state law and with the following provisions. An employee who, on or after July 1, 2016, works for the city for the same works in the city for the same employer for 30 days or more within a year from the commencement of employment is entitled to paid sick leave. Paid sick leave shall begin on the first day of employment or July 1, 2016, whichever is later. An employee may use paid sick leave beginning on the 90th day of employment or July 1, 2016, whichever is later. Employees will be entitled to take 48 hours of leave per calendar year and must be provided upfront by the employer or accrued at the rate of 1 hour per every 30 hours worked. Accrued paid sick leave shall carry over to the following year of employment and may be capped at 72 hours. An employer may set a higher cap or no cap at all. If an employer has a paid sick leave or a paid time off policy that provides no less than 48 hours of paid sick leave or paid time off, no additional time is required. An employer shall provide sick days upon the oral or written request of an employee for themselves or a family member as defined by state law or for any individual related by blood or affinity whose close association with the employee is the equivalent of a family relationship. No documentation is required. An employer is not required to provide compensation to an employee for an accrued or unused sick days upon termination, resignation, retirement, or other separation from employment. If an employee separates from an employer and is rehired by the employer within 1 year from the date of separation, previously accrued and unused sick time shall be reinstated. Retaliation or discrimination against an employee who requests paid sick days or uses paid sick days or both is prohibited. And the city's paid sick leave policy will be enforced by the Office of Wage Standards. Are we adding something else? Are we adding something else? Let me just clarify. If an employer has a paid leave or a paid time off policy that provides no less than 48 hours of paid leave or paid time off, or which gives additional payment for compensated time off equal to or no less than 48 hours of paid leave or paid leave time off, no additional time is required. Okay.
Got it.
Got that? Okay, great. All right, members, if there's no objection.
Mr.
Mr. Chair, just for clarification
Yes.
on the recommendations of CLA report, are we referring to the March 18th, 2016 report or the April 8th or both? Because there are different.
I think both.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Mr. Price, and I think Mr. Krikorian had an amendment with regard to the entertainment industry or any other industry that has paid, when they pay for the time, that it would be compliant.
I think that's what the chair just dealt with that language. That sounds.
That was the attempt.
Yeah. Well, that sounded to me like it meets the need, but obviously, in the drafting of it, if it requires further noodling, we should do that.
But that was the intent to address that concern.
That's how I took it, and I think that sounds like it meets the objective.
Okay, members, if there's no other discussion or objection or comment, that will be the order. Thank you. Okay, we'll take items. Thank you. Thank you for your attention to that matter. We'll take items 2, 3, and 4.
Item number 2 is a CLA report relative to funding for city-owned properties designated for economic development use. Item number 3 is a CAO, GSD, and economic and workforce development reports relative to the development of citywide asset management plan and the leveraging of city properties for economic development and job creation. Item number 4 is a Municipal Facilities Committee report.
Wait. Excuse me, Mr. Clerk. Just hold on for a second. Let's let the crowd leave.
Ladies and gentlemen, we still have a full agenda. Please exit the room quietly, please.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to, Mr. Clerk, why don't you reread that, please, for us?
Item number 2 is a CLA report relative to funding for city-owned properties designated for economic development use. Item number 3 is a CAO, GSD, and EWDD reports relative to the development of a citywide asset management plan and the leveraging of city properties for economic development and job creation. And item number 4 is a Municipal Facilities Committee report relative to various actions in connection with 10 former Community Redevelopment Agency of the City of Los Angeles future development properties.
Okay, items 2 and 3 were heard in the ad hoc committee. We're going to hear that again. And item 4 is a new report from the CAO. So I don't know where you want to start.
I guess we introduce everybody at the table. I'm Josh Romer with the Office of the City Administrative Officer.
I'm Cheryl Benars with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst.
Samuel Hughes with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development.
Amy Benson from the Department of General Services Real Estate Services Division.
Okay, so at the request of the committee chair, we can start with the discussion of number 4. Again, as I mentioned, Josh Romer with the CAO. Item number 4 in front of you is a status update on the progress that the city is making on the on 10 future development properties. These are 10 properties that are owned by the CRA and that they were mandated from the state to sell. Because the city was not necessarily comfortable with having these go to the highest bidder without the city having any sort of input on what was happening there, we entered into option agreements that were authorized by council in January 2014. The option agreements give the city exclusive right to negotiate for potential future purchases of the property, and also give us exclusive right to purchase the property from the CRA. In general, the city has made significant progress on each of these 10 properties. These are some of the most significant development sites in the city of Los Angeles. All the members of the panel in front of you have worked to varying degrees on moving these forward. The recommendation in the report requires or requests that a certain portion of funds that are currently segregated in the UB account be provided to the Economic and Workforce Development Department to pay for appraisals of these properties. The option agreements that we've entered into with CRA require us to pay for appraisals of each of the properties. We expect across the 10 properties the potential cost might accrue to $300,000. So therefore, the recommended actions that are in item number 4 basically seek to make those monies available. We are currently in the process of hiring appraisers, and my colleague at EWDD can advise a little bit more on that status, but we are generally ready to move forward on the appraisals and want to identify the funding as described in the report.
Okay. Any questions on that, members? Item 4. All right, next.
So I'm reporting on item number 2. This committee had requested a report back from the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst relative to the proposed asset management evaluation framework that was proposed by the CAO's office. Our office agrees with many of the CAO recommendations, including the establishment of an economic development trust fund that would have the proceeds from the sale of city-owned property for economic development purposes deposited into that special trust fund. Our office is making a few amendments to some of the CAO recommendations. First, our office recommends that half of the proceeds be deposited between the Economic Development Trust Fund and the affected council office's Real Property Trust Fund to be consistent with the existing surplus property sale process. The second recommendation that our office is recommending to change is that the CAO, CLA, and affected council office be included as part of any review of any RFPs that are released for the sale of economic development properties. And then our office is also recommending that the Municipal Facilities Committee remain as structured with the CAO, CLA, and mayor as its members and the general managers reporting to the committee as needed. Lastly, our office was also instructed to report on what to do with the rental revenue received from any CRA future development properties. Currently, the city CRA conveyed 10 properties to the city. Out of the 10, 2 are currently occupied by tenants, and that rental revenue is currently being deposited into the Department of General Services because they have accepted the responsibility of maintaining those properties. So our office would recommend that any future rental revenue from the future development properties be deposited into the Economic Development Trust Fund to be used for the maintenance of the future development.
These are the 10 properties that we just looked at in item 4. So which two are occupied now?
So the 2 properties that are occupied are the Watts train station in CD15. It's occupied by a Department of Water and Power Service Center as well as a local vendor. The other property is in CD14. It's 1300 East 1st Street. It's currently occupied by a arts and education nonprofit known as Self-Help Graphics. So those are the 3 tenants in 2 of the properties. Self-Help Graphics rent is actually in abeyance right now. We will start collecting rent again in April. Well, I guess that's this month.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it. And we just recommend adopting the CLA recommendations in the report.
Okay. So we've heard from 2, 4, we've got 3.
Number 3 was just an update from several departments on the development of the citywide asset management plan and leveraging the city properties for economic development and job creation. So the Department of General Services did give an update at the Jobs Committee. So if you'd like, I can let you know what the Department of General Services
Yes,
is
please
as
do.
far.
Just
So over the last year, the Department of General Services has been working collaboratively with a lot of the stakeholder departments in the city and offices to acquire an asset management system and also to improve the accuracy of our facility information. Starting in May of 2015, GSD formed an AMS, or an Asset Management System, Executive and Steering Committee. So it was made up of several members from CAO, CLA, Mayor's Office, Recreation and Parks, DOT, ITA, and BOE. Last November, an RFP was released to find a firm to provide software and services for the AMS. And it was a pretty arduous process. It was done in 2 stages. The first stage, we received 7 proposals from 7 firms, and they're evaluated on their past experience, references, and their cost. The committees went through a long process of trying to get together some, city data, and also some scripts and scripted scenarios about how the city does business, and to see this demonstrated into the systems of the 5 finalists that we chose. So out of the 7 proposals, we've picked 5 finalists, gave them the city data and some sample city data and the scripted scenarios, and gave them a month to load them into their system. So when they came back, we were able to test their business process, how it looks on the system, how users would be able to interface, how it also would interface with our LA County Assessor's Office, planning departments, ZEMAS, and other systems like that. In early March, we held the demonstrations. They were each a full day for each of the 5 finalists, so it was a pretty long process for our 6 panelists. But at the end of the day, we ended up choosing and selecting AssetWorks as the best solution for the city because of their intuitive navigability, that's a hard word, its display screens and dashboards. And also, out of the box, the reporting process, the standard reports that they have available, the mapping features, and the graphical interface. It'll also help us to standardize reports out of the box and have like lease abstracts, basic property information that not only staff will be able to do, but sitting at your desk, anybody in the city could do. And also, we'll have an outside-facing portal that the constituents can also access and have access to information about our city facilities as well.
So when's it anticipated that this software is going to be operational?
So within the next year, we will be doing implementation and the configuring of the system, and we're going to be loading data into the system. In the meantime, we have an interim data system that we will be bringing up to date and loading information that we have cleansed so far. We have 26 buildings that we used as a pilot project to see what type of detail we need for all of our buildings going forward, and then we have some basic information about, the 800 plus buildings that the city owns that we'll be putting in, at the first part. So it'll be done incrementally. So out of all that, we have several modules that we're going to be starting off with, including the real estate portfolio management, building operations and maintenance, space planning, management, asset management, and energy conservation and energy management. And this will allow us also to do some analytical reporting, such as, how is this building performing as an asset compared to its assessed value, and how much have we been spending over the last year for maintenance and capital costs and things like that. So this is going to be a very robust system, and like I said, it will be done over the next year, and we'll be testing it over the next year, and in the meantime, we'll have an interim system that we'll be able to use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Members, any questions on items 2, 3, or 4? Seeing no questions, I'll recommend that we concur with the ad hoc committee's recommendations for items 2 and 3 and approve the CAO report recommendations for item 4. If there are no objections, that will be the order. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, is there any other business before us at this time?
No, sir.
All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.